we decided we're going to do our own top 5 NBA greats of all time. Who are the greatest players, the top 5 greatest players in the NBA? We're going to kind of bounce off each other. We're going to start with our 5s, give our reasons, and keep moving. So I'm gonna let you start with your number 5. I'll tell my 5, and then I'll tell my 4. So we'll kind of snake it around how we get to both our greatest players of all time.
Yeah, so I mean, with mine, it's pretty simple. I think going into these top 5 lists, anybody who basically has any kind of basketball knowledge, pretty much 1 through 3 is pretty much identical. Maybe the order might be a little different, but the top 3 are for sure who they are. But my number 5, I mean, the greatest power forward of all time. You ask anybody that question, of course, they're going to say Tim Duncan, right? There's not really much to go into it. Obviously, his number speaks for himself. He was honestly a Ray Allen 3 away from being a 6-time champion as opposed to a 5-time champion. But, we're not going to get into that right now.
That one hurt.
He should have been on the floor for that play. There's no reason Chris Bosh should have got that rebound to throw it out to Ray Allen, because Tim Duncan should have been on the floor getting that rebound and then securing them their championship. But anyway, yes, Tim Duncan is the greatest power forward of all time, so he makes number 5 on my list.
Okay, interesting. So number 5 on my list is probably not somebody that's on most people's list, even though he's got to be in that top 10 somewhere. That's Shaquille O'Neal. And maybe this is just from me growing up during that time. I saw Shaq come into the NBA. I saw him grow into the monster that three-peated with the Lakers. Getting to see him on television, you just didn't realize how good that guy was. And I'm from the era where you had some of the greatest centers of all time. You had Patrick Ewing, Hakeem Olajuwon, David Robinson, and throw in Lonzo. Those guys were, huge, big centers. To watch what Shaq would do to David Robinson was just ridiculous to me. He would ragdoll David Robinson. He just ragdolled these guys. And I think the only knock to Shaq is that his career didn't end that great. He kind of got lazy towards the end, and about when he got to Phoenix, that's when he just kind of plummeted. But yeah, Shaq from 92, I believe came in 92 through his Heat run, one of the greatest centers ever, or if not the greatest center ever. So that's my number 5. My number 4, I'm with you, Tim Duncan, greatest power forward of all time. Actually, a fun fact, he spent most of his career after 2005 playing center, but he's still the greatest power forward. But, for my criteria, I choose winning. Now, he didn't have, his career, he ended with 19 points, 10 rebounds, 2.2 blocks. Doesn't look like a greatest player of all time. But there's one number that separates him from almost anybody, and that's 71.9%. That's his winning percentage in the league. I mean, that guy was a winner. So if you're a winner and you're a prime figure on your team, you got to be great. So, that's why Tim Duncan is my number 4 greatest player of all time.
Okay. And, to respond just really quickly about your Shaq point, the reason why I didn't put him in my top 5 was because of like the longevity of his career and the fact that he had potential to be top 3 minimum had he, took better care of his body, took the game a little bit more serious, things of that nature could have really put him a step above the rest, or more than what he already was when he was dominant.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
But my number 4 is Earvin Magic Johnson, the best point guard of all time. Because again, when you're talking about a top 5 list, if you are the greatest point guard of all time, and I know this might be a debate since Steph Curry's starting to come in. I don't think he's there yet, but he's knocking on the door. I think he's
not a point guard.
Well, I mean, he's a point. He don't play
a combo guard,
but he is technically in today's game a point guard. But yes, the best quintessential point guard, Earvin Magic Johnson. He's got the highest career average for assists at 11.2. I don't know if anybody's going to break that anytime soon. But yes, 5-time champion, 3-time Finals MVP. I know his numbers don't scream at you in terms of his points per game, but he's playing with the likes of Kareem, James Worthy, Jamal Wilkes, Michael Cooper. You get the picture. All these guys can put the ball in the hoop, and someone's got to set the table for them, and that is Magic Johnson.
So, okay. So who's your number 3?
So number 3, I have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I think this is now when we get into the territory of these 3 names coming up are obviously interchangeable in most people's eyes. But I mean, I think anybody having Kareem outside the top 3 is pretty egregious. He was the previous all-time leading scorer until, my man had come through and take that spot. 6 rings, 6 MVPs, 15-time All-NBA, 11 All-Defense, which is super slept on, by the way. Number 3 on my list is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Okay, so number 3 on my list, and don't throw stones, but LeBron James is my number 3 greatest player of all time. And I just told you what my criteria is winning. Now he's got the accolades, he's got the stats pretty much conquered, but he doesn't have the winning that those guys and the guys above him had. Yes, he's won multiple championships with different teams. That's great. He's the scoring leader of all time. That's a huge feat. But he doesn't win when it matters. Tim Duncan, 5-1, wins when it matters. Kareem wins when it matters. So my number 3 is LeBron James.
We're going to get into this. I know time permitting, we can't do it today, but we're
definitely going to. That's why I'm leaving out a lot of stuff that I would say, but I'm going to save that for that debate. So my number 2 is, of course, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. One of the greatest winners of all time. Just like Tim Duncan. He could win at any level you put him at. He had tons of longevity. He changed his game up to be able to handle the rigors of being a center throughout the mid 80s, from being dominant in Milwaukee with the Bucks to pretty much being a huge asset to the Los Angeles Lakers. You covered all his achievements. I mean, he's my number 2. So he's definitely, I think we kind of overlook him a lot. And but he is definitely, I don't see how you could put LeBron over Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. We just forget about what what Kareem did. But y'all, anyway, I'm gonna get you do your number 2 and 1, and we can talk about that.
Well, I think it's pretty clear at this point who number 2 and number 1 is for me. But number 2, of course, Michael Jeffrey Jordan. A lot of people's actually undisputed GOAT, and I understand. And I'm not going to fight somebody over if they got LeBron 2 or LeBron 1 or MJ 1, LeBron 2. Like, whatever the case is, LeBron is in that conversation. 1 and 2, I'm cool. If you got him at 3, we're going to have a conversation, because I don't know if I truly
we're going to have a conversation then. We're going to have a conversation.
Everybody who brings up the GOAT debate, it's LeBron and MJ. So for me, if it's the whole populace talking about it, these 2 are the greatest 2 players to ever play the game. Whether you have LeBron or MJ number 1, doesn't really matter. It's really, at that point, your personal opinion. But for me, I have LeBron at number 1, because the one stat that you revered Michael Jordan for was his scoring ability. And the crazy part is, LeBron isn't even considered a great scorer, but he's the NBA's undisputed all-time scoring leader. Passing, when you said, I don't know how you could put LeBron over Kareem, well, remember the night when LeBron passed Kareem on the all-time scoring list and he gave him the ball? He said, here you go, young man. It's yours now, right?
And then they lose that game. So,
they probably did, but that team wasn't really all that good. But that's not the part of this conversation. But LeBron is the number 1. 4 rings, 4 Finals MVPs, and the one thing, because I know we're running out of time, the one thing that sets him apart about everybody on this list, he is a one-man team. He can do everything. He can score better than Magic. He can score as good, if not better than Michael Jordan, right? On top of also rebounding the ball at a high level, facilitating the offense, and just leading all his team. When you talk about his intangibles in terms of winning time, it's on him. He doesn't have the luxury of having a great coach. It's just LeBron and everybody else. I'll let you go next.
All right. Well, for the sake of time, I'm gonna just tell you, you know who number one is. Michael Jordan. He's the greatest. Even everyone in the NBA says he's the greatest. So LeBron's contemporaries chose him over LeBron. So that tells you all you need to know. But the one mic drop for Jordan being the greatest was the All-Star game a few years back in Cleveland. 75 greatest players of all time introduced. You're in who you say is the greatest of all time's home. You're in his home gym. And who gets the biggest ovation of all of them? So after being retired for 20 years now, he still gets the biggest reactions of anybody. He's the GOAT. There's no debate. We'll debate about it at some point, but there's really not.
Definitely debate.
he globalized the game. If it wasn't for Michael Jordan, you probably wouldn't see a lot of stuff you see today. Still holds the record of the highest rated NBA finals of all time. But we're running out of time, so we're going to end this episode here.